where we're going to be talking about the importance of building generational wealth, the importance of managing our dollar, and just sharing some great information about what it means to be financially independent and literate. My name is Fabiola Riobi. I'm an international research scholar and advocate for financial independence. I also have the honor of serving on the HCPA board. And today I will be your guest MC host with my co-board member, Marilyn Douglas Jones, who will serve as your moderator. The run of the show, we have two phenomenal guest speakers. I am so excited that these two gentlemen have made time to join us today. I can't thank them enough. First, we have Mr. Philip Dunn, who is the founder and CEO of Black Business Focus Group, and To the Table. He will help us understand. That's right. Let's give a round of applause for Mr. Dunn. Thank you so much. Mr. Dunn is here with us today just to give us some insightful information about data, understanding data, particularly when it comes to the economy and what we like to call the Black dollar. Alongside Mr. Dunn, we'll have Mr. Michael Beeman. Mike Beeman has been 15 years as a financial service advisor, investment consultant, and he is the regional vice president with Primerica Financial Services. Mike is going to break down some foundational constructs for us about how money works. So thank you so much, Mike, as well. We are so excited that all of you guys have joined us. Thank you. We're going to go through some great concepts. We'll have our speakers talk. And then, as I said, my co-moderator, Marilyn Douglas, would come in and moderate and ask some questions. So feel free to pose your questions in the chat, and let's get ready to have some great authentic conversations, because we finally have people for us that are looking out for our best interests. We're going to give us some real insightful information about what is not a secret, what shouldn't be a secret, which is basically what our money should do for us, and it possibly is doing for others. So thank you so much and welcome. Mr. Dunn.
All right.
Thank you, Fabiola, for that awesome introduction, and thank you, Marilyn, for the invitation to come and speak to you all today. I want to talk to you all today about something that's very important, very near and dear to me, and I'm going to share my screen here, and I want you all to let me know as soon as you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
Here. All right. And I am going to, give me 1 second, pull this up. And I'm going to talk to you all today about Black group economics. And this is the fourth presentation that I've done on this topic. And I want to talk to you all about the importance of seeking value within the Black community. Now, no matter where you're from, whether you're from the Caribbean or whether you're from the States, this is so very important to the people that have the melanin in our skin the way that we do. And the importance of seeking value within the Black community, it's important that we start to teach this concept and also put the responsibility and the accountability on each one of us as individuals. So it's very important on why you should lead the way. This is a little bit of information about me. I also have a little bit of experience in corporate America, 20 years of experience in oil and gas, aerospace and defense industry, primarily in supply chain governance, compliance, audit, finance, and shared services. I'm a dad, proud dad, and a husband. And I really enjoy spending time with my family. I've also done some adjunct professor work at some of the universities here in Houston. Enough about me. And by the way, that's not Idris Elba or Will Smith. That's just me. So yeah, baby's past this. All right, that was a bad. All right. This workshop, this presentation is actually a workshop that I put on, and it's probably about a 2 to 3 hour workshop where I teach people the importance of changing their habits on where they spend their dollars, where they decide to circulate their dollars. So we're not going to go through this full workshop, but these are some of the objectives that you will get, and I'll briefly speed through some of the slides in order to keep us on time. But first, before we get started, I always have to start out each presentation with this question, and I want you all to unmute for a moment. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. These are very important questions, and I want you to really think about these as I ask them. Who of you wants to see the Black community, which includes the Caribbean community, who wants to see the Black community succeed at the same rate or better than other communities? And hopefully everyone says yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, yes.
I once did a presentation. There was some other folks in the audience, and not everybody raised their hand or said, I'm glad to see that we're all like-minded here. So now I've got to ask you some tough questions. How many of you actually buy Black at least 20 times a month? I heard someone
I
kind
do.
of. Someone said I do. Who said I do?
I do.
Tarima, Badish,
Noel.
Marilyn.
So we got about 3 or 4 people that are actually buying Black at least 20 times a month. So now I've got to ask you one more question. Who buys Black at least 3 times a month? Hopefully that's everybody.
Yes.
The work that I'm doing here in Maryland, and Maryland's familiar with this, is I'm reconditioning the Black consumer through to the table in the Black Business Focus Group to emphasize making more purchases within the Black community. And what we're doing is we're measuring this behavior through a platform that I have in a social media focus group where people actually make purchases from Black-owned businesses, and then they log those transactions at our platform at To the Table in the Black Business Focus Group. If you're not a part of the Black Business Focus Group, I encourage you to get with Marilyn after this presentation and really join this group. It's free, it's no charge, no cost to anyone as a consumer. And if you're a business owner, it's also a great place to market your business for free as well. So definitely take a look at that after this meeting today. I want to move forward with the presentation, talk to you a little bit about To the Table real quickly. We're a group of about 17,500 consumers and Black-owned business members, and we practice group economics. I can't say that enough. We practice group economics. Our consumer members are out there seeking value in quality goods and services from Black-owned businesses. Our businesses then are seeking to deliver that value of quality goods and services to our dedicated consumer base. So we do this in a small setting so that we can make sure that we minimize any issues that can commonly occur in our community. I'm sure that some of the issues we have in the United States are also some similar issues that we have in the Caribbean communities as well. So we're really trying to manage this at a smaller level in order to grow this across the entire Black community. The mission, of course, is to improve the collective condition of the overall Black community. That is the diaspora. That's everyone, no matter where we were dropped off on the transition from the motherland. This includes the entire Black community. And the vision, of course, is to create an economy that transforms the Black community. So let's define group economics and what that means. Group economics is defined as one group of people who agree to actively and consciously pursue common economic interests to sustain and secure themselves. So that's one group of people. So that's us. Whether you're a part of the Caribbean family is a part of the larger Black family that, of course, I consider the United States and the Caribbean together in this group. Group economics is very important because we need to begin the process of circulating our dollars and making transactions with businesses within our community if we are to strengthen and galvanize our community. This graphic to the left here, it shows that 40 million Black Americans spend $1.1 trillion a year. Now, if we spent just a third of this with each other, we'd all be millionaires in 2 years. Now, that's a pretty tough statistic there to look at and turn away from. And what I think is missing is that we need groups like the Black Business Focus Group To the Table out here reinforcing this message. There should be a group economic cycle within our community, one that we're not seeing at the moment, and that is that individuals within our community and also our allies should be buying or making purchases from Black-owned businesses. Those Black-owned businesses should then make purchases from the Black community, from other Black-owned businesses. They should also hire from the Black community. And what this does is it creates jobs within our community that we create and sustain for ourselves. It also creates income within our community, and then cash flow and home ownership. And I'll go into why all of that is important in 1 second. I mentioned those four components there: jobs, income, cash flow, and home ownership. Those are the four major components of wealth. And I'm sure that'll be discussed a little bit further in this meeting. But this is why we should all be participating in practicing group economics. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Where we are today, I mentioned the 1.1 to 1.3 trillion dollars that we spend annually. Notice that the wording is saying that we spend that annually. So once we spend it, we never get those dollars back, right? Those dollars go outside of our community and they never come back in. Or if they do come back in, they come back in the form of wages that are typically lower than what our white counterparts would typically make. Now, in order for us to move to the future state is where those $1.3 trillion are circulated annually within our community. It's going to take some pain, it's going to take some sacrifice, and it's going to take some commitment. And I have some exercises that I do in my workshop where we work through this. I talk about change management in the workshop as well. We won't go into that. I want to dive a little bit further into the need for us changing in these last 5 minutes. Those key factors we talked about, this spells out the need. And there are some key indicators that we look at Black Business Focus Group and to the table. Those key indicators are the unemployment rate, the income gap, cash flow circulation rate, home ownership level, and the wealth gap. So if you take a look at this chart, this is a chart from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And if you just take a look at the top row there, you'll see that the Black or African American community is positioned between the white, Asian, and Latino communities. And one thing that you'll notice, and I'll give Marilyn this presentation after the meeting, you'll notice that the Black unemployment rate is consistently higher, almost twice as high than the white unemployment rate in the U.S. And it's almost the same across the Asian and Latino community as well. So this tells us that there's some systemic barriers that are causing the unemployment rate to be high within our community. So that's just the unemployment rate. Let's take a look at the income gap. You'll notice that across the Asian, white, Hispanic, and Black communities, Black professionals, Black households typically earn less than our counterparts in other communities. Now, you got to ask yourself, why is that? You got to dig into that and understand why that is. And of course, we all know the answer: systemic discrimination. And we don't have the businesses within our community to support our own community. Let's take a look at the cash flow circulation. This is a very important indicator of a community's health. And if you take a look at the Asian community, it's been said that the dollar circulates for an entire month within their community. And if you take a look at the white community, they're somewhere around 10 days within their community where they actually get a dollar in the form of a paycheck and spend it with other folks that look like them within their community. Take a look at the Jewish community. By religion, they practice group economics very well. And so they're sitting at around 19 days. In the Black community, I can get my paycheck, and if I were to go out and make a transaction, it's probably not going to be with a Black-owned business. And that's because we don't have enough businesses within our community to shop from. And so that has to change. If you think about your heart rate, if you have a very active lifestyle, you're going to have a very average heart rate, and it's going to look something like a very healthy person. If you have a below average heart rate, you're probably not going to be healthy. And so if you think about the Black community as in terms of the human body, we have a very low heart rate right now. Those dollars are not circulating in our community in a healthy fashion. The last thing we'll take a look at is the home ownership rate by race. You'll notice that, and this is information gathered from the American Real Estate Association, 64% of white American families own homes, 54% of Asian families, 41% of Hispanic families, and then just 33% of Black families have home ownership. So that white home ownership rate is more than 10% higher than that of any other minority race. It is nearly double the Black home ownership rate. So all of these components that we talked about today, they basically spell out to us having an issue with achieving wealth. And this last chart that I'll show you here, this last minute or so, really spells out that we have a very huge problem. And this chart shows the wealth gap. Racial wealth inequality in the United States has been measured for a long time. And if you take a look at this time period from 1983, projected all the way to about 3 years from now, 2024, take a look at this blue line. That blue line is the level of wealth in the white community. So back in 1983, average white family had $102,000 worth of wealth. The black family had around $6,800. So that means that we didn't have enough money to circulate within our community. It probably meant that we were making far less than our counterparts in other communities in terms of income. We probably didn't have home ownership at a significant rate during that time. But if you advance this needle forward, you'll see that we still have a wide and persisting gap in wealth between the communities. This is a problem. It spells out that we do have some very significant disparities that can't be repaired by ourselves alone. And so we're going to need government intervention in order to close this gap. This gap is very important. It's a very strong indicator of how well our country, our collective countries are doing in making sure that everyone has the same opportunities to pursue wealth, to pursue happiness, and to enjoy all the opportunities that our white brothers and sisters have encountered. And so that's what I wanted to show you all today. I know that some of this it takes a lot of time really to explain, but I wanted to put this information in front of you because I think it spells out a pretty compelling case for reparations, which I'll be talking about on Wednesday on another platform. And it also spells out that this problem isn't going to fix itself. And it's going to take meetings like this one, where we're going to encourage one another to transact more than just 3 times a month with Black-owned businesses, where we're going to have to push past the pain of dealing with each other and Black-owned businesses and a lot of the service issues that we encounter. And we're going to have to make some sacrifices. And if you think about our ancestry, we all come from a very strong ancestry, very strong lineage, no matter what tribe or sectarian group we came from. Once we got to these United States, we hit the ground running. And so we have to really start thinking about this in terms of a group and practicing group economics and working together in large ways and small ways in order to close this wealth gap so that we can close all those other gaps that we saw before. So that's my time. I'm looking forward to some of the questions that we're going to have a little bit later. And out of respect for the next presenter's time, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. But continually thank you all for having me here today, and I look forward to having more conversations about this in the future. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Mr. Dunn, thank you so much. Thank you for providing that great visual aid and what I hope will help facilitate the conversation later during our Q&A section. Now we'll turn over the platform to Mike Beeman, who will share his screen and present some facts and opportunities to us as well.
Great. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with you guys today. I'm going to cover just a few ideas and concepts of how money works, things that we should know, that we need to know, that we probably don't already know. Maybe some do, maybe some don't, and do my best to relate it to today's current events and what's really going on out there. For myself, I've been in the financial services industry for almost 15 years. I started out at the very beginning. I didn't have any experience. I mean, I worked in banking when I first started working, but nothing in real finance. And I like to say I'm really in financial education, not so much financial advisement, because if you're educated, you can kind of figure a lot of these things out. And I always love to say that the things that we cover are things that we should already know that people just don't, right? And so with that being said, I'm going to open up a presentation here with you. There's a lot of slides, but I'm going to flip through a lot of them very fast because I actually don't need all of them to cover what I'm going to cover with you guys. Okay, so, oops. How money works, right? basically you want to make sure that you understand what you can do, right? I always tell my team, there's only two things you can control in life, and that's your attitude and your activity. And I think if a lot of us had that talk and that understanding, we'd have a lot less stress on our hearts, because we would understand that there's certain things that you just can't control, so don't try to, right? But you can control building your savings. You can control your debt, whether you're in it or not. And you can definitely control your financial independence if you have the proper knowledge, mindset, and then you apply it, right? I know many of you, right, have we all heard the term knowledge is power? Just a show of hands, right? And for a secondary show of hands, how many believe knowledge is power? Right? And I see some showed hands and some didn't. And I think the reason is because it's not knowledge is power. The application of the knowledge is power, right? As Mr. Dunn, right, so generously put his hand up afterwards. And these are some of these points that we need to know, is understanding that applying that knowledge is really when the power comes in, right? Then there's things, right, that we can't control, right? You can't control the future, Social Security, your employer, taxes, inflation, rising costs, the risks of single investments. You can't control those things, right? But you can control whether or not you contribute towards retirement. You can control other sources of income, right? I know wealthy people have multiple sources of income. You can control, how to reduce taxes, right? Again, that's a part of the learning curve. Maximizing your savings. Understand that you didn't start to work to pay bills, right? You worked because there was something on your heart or something that you had to do to contribute towards. That doesn't mean that it's still the same. We change in life, right? So your goals should change along those lines. Saving more, we can definitely control that. And finally, diversity of your investment choices, okay? And so let's look at, right, how much does the average person get taught about investing in school, right? And if you're looking at the Black community, the Hispanic community, right, the minority community, how in our households are these everyday conversations, right? Or did you grow up like I did, right? Go to school, get good grades, do good, so you can, right, get a good education, and then get a good job, and things will be okay. And obviously we see with the state of the pandemic, things are not okay. But even before the pandemic, I don't know if you knew, 78% of households, right, live check to check. I don't think that's surprising anybody. 40% of people spend half of their income, guys, half. That's very bad, on debt, right? And then, right, generational wealth. Well, I always like to say that generational wealth would happen a lot faster, especially in the Black community, right? If each person was they had an understanding of how wealth grows. It's not checking and savings, it's investing in mutual funds, ownership, right? I always say ownership versus loanership. And Black lives would matter a lot more if they're, what's coinciding with these unforgivable and unforgettable killings of our people, if the insurance companies were involved, right? If they had proper life insurance, we wouldn't be the only ones speaking at the rooftops telling, hey, listen, stop what's going on. You'd have a lot more of these companies representing us just the same, okay? And so just look at greed and buy and fear and sell. See, a lot of people get it confused. You're supposed to buy low and sell high, and people get greedy and they don't have a game plan, right? And having a game plan is huge. And so when they get greedy, they buy high and then they sell low, and they defeat the purpose. And then we kind of continue to do the same thing over and over again, which is the definition of insanity. And so we must stop being insane, right? And so again, let's look a little bit further about the impact of not being taught, right? From 1989 to 2000, guys, it's just the average return on stock and mutual funds just the same, right? 8.4%. Yet the average investor, right, 1.9%. Let's look at this even further, right? What are the effects of not knowing over time? Okay, so if you had $100,000 and you put that away at 1.9% rate of return, which is somewhere along the average now that people are receiving, just for 20 years, it's only $145,000. Whereas when we put our money in the bank and they take our money and do with it what we could or should be doing, but don't because we just simply don't have the knowledge, they're receiving the 8.4% rate of return. It's a $500,000 return on the same money. The time is the same. The difference is the knowledge, right? And so, again, tell me if you see a trend here, right? From 1990 to 2009, the average investor only about 2.2% return, okay? And again, 91 to 2010, whereas the investments have returned over 10%. It continues over 10%. The average investor themselves, 2.5%, right? And so, do you see a trend? It's still the same, right? I think we kind of get the point here, right? And so in a 30-year period, you have the same scenario. Well, it's like 2.6% over 30 years. That's only 215,000. Now, if you're married, that's two people trying to live off of 215,000, which is what is their longest vacation they would ever take as retirement. That's not possible to do that on such small means. Where the average investor, not even 10%, because over time, in terms of mutual funds where you have ownership, people are receiving 10, 12% plus. But just to kind of under promise and over deliver, that's $1 million that you would have there if you just simply had the proper information, right? And so, as it says here, over 70% of people have no one helping them with their investments. Matter of fact, over 70% of people have nobody helping them with finance in general. I don't know if your conversations were different growing up, but none of mine were revolved around finance, right? I grew up in a small hood that, people were just working and trying to make, right? The baby boomers were the working class. So they were just trying to make ends meet, right? And so what kind of teachings can we receive when you're not there to be the loudest voice in your children's ear, your community's ear? So this is why these things are so important, right? And so let's teach people a better way, guys, right? Let's take the books off the shelves, crack them open and read them. If you're like me, I love audio books. Do that at the very least, right? It's going to give you something other than nothing, right? And so this brings me to something that I teach almost on an everyday basis, and it's called the Rule of 72. I'm only going to go over two of the scenarios here very quickly, but basically it educates you how money grows and doubles over time. You take your interest rate that you receive wherever your money's going, you divide that into the number 72, and your return is how long it's going to take you for that money to double. So 3 into 72, right, is 24. So if I took, right, a baby and put away $2,000 for them, it would take 48 years, right, before that 2,000 turned to 8,000. And this is just showing on the age of a 22-year-old, right? So from 22 to 46, your money doubled. And by the time you're 70, there's no way you can retire, right? And so let me show you what the bank does. See, the bank takes our money. They don't put it in a Ziploc bag and say, hey, let me hold this for Marilyn later and give it back to her when she comes back. Let me hold this for Phil later and give it back to him. They don't do that. They invest that money, which we can do. They make a huge return, in this scenario, over $500,000, and then they give us whichever we knew more about before seeing them. And obviously, we know that is not fair, but the funny part is it is fair, right? It's fair because they didn't force us to give them our money, right? They just gave an option. Well, let's give her a better one, okay? Generational wealth building, right? Here's 3 total reasons why people fail in general, especially when it comes to generational wealth, but in finance in general, right? Number 1, that there's no financial education. Right? I remember going to school, right? I graduated at the top of my class in high school, right? And then I graduated with high honors in college, magna cum laude. But it wasn't because they educated me specifically on, hey, this is how to succeed here. It was because I was hungry and I needed to get in and get out so I can get to working. But that education kind of fell short because I had to go back to school. So whenever I hear someone say, hey, I got to go back to school, somewhere along the line, something probably went wrong. And so having a financial game plan is going to help just the same. I've never seen a football game where the coach didn't have a game plan, right? I've never seen any type of a competitive sport where there wasn't a game plan to adhere by. And then finally, get yourself a mentor, a coach, someone that's going to teach you how to do the things that you want to be successful at. In fact, keys to success are find someone who's successful doing what you are looking to do and then mimic and or copy them as best as possible, right? And so buying the right kind of life insurance, that right there is huge. This creates generational wealth more than many other things, especially in the United States, because we don't have kings and queens, right? That's not where we are here. Here, we have to pass down this knowledge. And so just thinking about this, I'm not going to speak exactly because you can see what's on the screen here, but term insurance plus an investment separately is the way to go, right? Whole life, no one, first of all, wants to pay a bill for the rest of their life. That there's no reason to do that. And the only reason people have to buy life insurance is because they don't have the wealth built. So I always call it, you're going to rent wealth and build wealth at the same time, because eventually once your wealth is built, you don't need the insurance because you've created your own sense of insurance, right? And then so if you guys have more questions, here's my contact information there that you can ask, but I know we're going to have a Q&A right after this, but I want to leave you with a couple of questions that I feel like people should ask, right? Number one, do I have a Roth IRA? Do I have a IRA in general? What is an IRA, right? How do I find out more about mutual funds? Do I know what dollar cost averaging is, right? These are some of the questions that people need to know so that they can understand their finances better. And the biggest part of that, ladies and gentlemen, is having your goals written down. They must be clear, concise. You must be able to build a mental picture of what you want. Because if you don't know what you want, it is very tough for others to help you fight for what you want. And I'm leaving 3 minutes on the table, but that's what I got for now.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mike. Very informative presentation. Thank you for sharing about that. The rule of 72 is something that I never get tired of learning and relearning and re-seeing because it does help us with our decisions. Marilyn Douglas, my dear, I hope you're ready to come in and step in and help us out with some looking over the chat and helping people get their questions across for both Mr. Dunn and Mike Beeman. Marilyn?
Well, thank you. Hello, everyone, again. As mentioned, my name is Marilyn Douglas Jones, and I'm a college educator as well as a financial coach myself with the World Financial Group. And we have a very robust financial education program through World System Builder. And of course, we used to be kin with Primerica. So it's all about love, right? We were all one at one point through A.L. Williams. I don't see a question in the chat, but what value? I know that Philip mentioned. Noel, did you put a question in the chat? Unmute, please.
No, I didn't put it in the chat. I can now.
Okay.
But I'll put it in the chat now. No problem.
Well, go ahead, say it too, so that we can move along.
I'll wait till you're finished and then I'll ask my question.
No, I'm the moderator. I'll welcome the question right now. So.
Excellent. Okay, so my question is actually for Mr. Dunn. Mr. Dunn, thank you so much for your presentation, and it actually did spark an inquiry that I've had for a long time. So one of the things, I know in business, when we look to support businesses, there are three factors that we all look for in continuing to support the business. It's the product, it's the service, and it's also the affordability of what we're looking to buy, right? So I think when it comes to Black-owned businesses, affordability has never been an issue, at least for me, and the actual quality of the product has never been an issue because, again, I support Black businesses all the time, but I do think that a lot of times, especially in the Caribbean community, we may question the level of service that we're getting. One of the stereotypes that we have is that a lot of Caribbean-owned businesses or Black-owned businesses, they give you a great product and it's affordable, but the people that work there or the attitudes of the people, they're not the greatest, So a lot of people may stray away from Black-owned businesses based on the way that they treat you once you walk into their place of patronage. Now, what would be a good strategy, not only for the business owners, but for the consumers to kind of eradicate or get rid of this stereotype that Black-owned businesses are not the best at treating their customers that great? What would be your suggestion?
No, thank you for that question, because that is one of the number one reasons why Black consumers will not support other Black-owned businesses. However, there's a little bit something more to that, because once we have one negative experience with one Black-owned business, we cast that aspersion across all Black-owned businesses, and then that communication goes out, it gets heard, it gets repeated, and folks tend to shy away. So one of the first things that I ask people to do is to stop saying that, to treat each individual business as an individual business. Anytime we go to a white-owned establishment, Italian-owned establishment, Asian-owned establishment, we may encounter some similar service level mishaps or experiences. But we don't go to the mountaintop and shout to folks. We don't do that, or I typically haven't seen folks do that. So I encourage the consumers to take a different attitude about it and just say, okay, this is one experience with one Black-owned business, and maybe I'll write a review and make sure that I get that experience shared with that Black-owned business manager. And then that way we start to communicate with one another and create some action plans where the business manager can then make some improvements. One of the things I liked about what you said, you listed out the factors: product, service, affordability, and quality. Well, that's great. I think that we have to continue looking for those factors. But for Black consumers, we're going to have to take a little bit more of a deeper analysis when it comes to spending our money with other companies and with Black-owned businesses. One of the things that I encourage consumers to take a look at is how many Black people do these businesses hire? How many Black-owned businesses do these businesses support themselves? How much in terms of investments do they make within the community? Because if you take a look at the mainstream businesses, a lot of the businesses that we support, Nike, Chick-fil-A, a lot of the mainstream businesses that are out there that are doing well, that are paying those high returns that Michael Beeman was talking about to their investors, they typically don't hire Black people in large numbers that are representative of our community. They typically don't have Blacks in leadership. They typically don't make purchases from Black-owned businesses. So in many instances, we're effectively funding our own oppression in that sense. And so when we take a deeper look beyond the value of the product, the service, the affordability, and the quality, we'll then see that that dollar is actually going towards making sure that folks like you and I have jobs, that we're increasing wealth within our community. So we're going to have to take a greater look outside of the quality that we get from the products and services as consumers. And then the businesses are going to have to, they're going to have to pay attention more to the consumer. They're going to have to listen every time you go in there and you write a review. And if the same thing is happening, somebody needs to be fired or some new policy needs to be drafted. So that's my recommendation for Black-owned businesses and for our consumers and our allies looking to support Black-owned businesses.
Yeah, I have a
Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Dunn as well. So we can all agree that buying Black is a component of the solution, but as you said during your presentation, there aren't enough Black businesses, if you just look at what you spend your money on a monthly basis, some of those things, I can't go and, there's not a Black car manufacturer that's manufacturing cars. So I'm going to have to spend outside of the community. So we know that there are some deeper structural systemic issues beyond what an individual consumer can do. So as consumers, we know what we can do to buy Black. But in attacking the other, what I believe is the larger percentage of the problem, the deeper structural systemic issues, what are some things that need to be done in order to, can you identify what you think are the most important structural issues and what needs to be done in order to attack those systemic issues?
Thank you. I see you working out and working hard. And I'm glad that you asked that question, because what we have to do as consumers is obviously, shop where we can. So once those dollars go to those businesses in the general area where we live or on the internet, from the Black-owned businesses that we know, they didn't have an opportunity to grow. So, for example, there's a restaurant owner here in Houston who owns the Breakfast Club. After some time, he purchased other restaurants and turned those into other profitable businesses as well. So those savvy business owners will expand over time. The structural issues, the way that we're going to have to work on that is through, I hate to use this term, boycotting or withdrawing economic support. And here's why I think that that's important. For example, back in the 60s, we had the Montgomery bus boycott. They had some 77,000 people in the city of Montgomery that said, hey, we're going to stop riding the bus. And we're going to stop riding the bus for as long as it takes. And the bus boycott ended up taking 368 days. The bus company that was targeted lost out on 4,000 riderships per day. That's a significant impact to their bottom line. Until ultimately they said, hey, you can sit anywhere you want. So while I don't think that the end goal was sufficient, I think that the method and the tactic that they used in order to change that structural issue was very effective. So now let's take that same approach today, and let's start focusing in on those companies that receive tons of our dollars, but they don't give us the value back in return. And the value, they don't hire us, they don't utilize our businesses, they don't invest in our communities. And so we may need to take a look at the Fortune 500. Start with the top. If it's Ford, if it's Chevrolet, whoever it is, we need to go to Ford and say, okay, Ford, we love you, but we're prepared to withdraw economic support unless you hire 13% in your workforce, folks that look like us, not just at the bottom, but at the executive level, the board level, leadership level, all the way throughout. And then we make sure that they also purchase from Black-owned businesses, et cetera. Now, it's probably best not to take a shotgun approach and go after every non-Black-owned business, but if we pick out 4 or 5 of them, I guarantee you about 200 of them, they'll start to act right as well. And that'll start to resolve some of the systemic issues that we're facing. That's one approach. It's not the only approach, but that's one that I like and I think is very effective.
Okay.
Well, that's a very good response. As a matter of fact, I drive a Ford because a Black person designed it. So sometimes you have to go deeper and do your research, right? There's a question here from Fabiola. And I think, Mike, who's eligible to have a Roth IRA? Do you have to be employed full time?
That's a great question. And so anyone with earned income is eligible for a Roth IRA, okay? And so what does that mean? If you have a child who is a model and that child brings in income, that child is eligible for an IRA, whether it's Roth or traditional. Specifically speaking, Roth has just some great advantages. You have to find out from the person themselves, right, what exactly they're looking for. But the average investor that has less than 120-ish thousand in terms of income annually can invest in a Roth IRA where you're taxed up front and your earnings grow tax free over time, and when you go to withdraw them during retirement, you can take those contributions out and you don't have to pay taxes for it. And so when you're a minor, the parent, right, needs to open up the Roth IRA for the child. They actually have minor Roth IRAs, right? I have a few clients that are in this scenario, and it's huge for them. And the other reason is too, because sometimes if you're a child star, right, and you have a high income and maybe your parents don't, what's pretty cool is that the income is based off of the parent, not the child, right? And so that helps them out as well. But again, Roth IRA, you do not need to work for a company that offers them. In fact, most companies, if they do offer benefits, it's going to be some sort of 401k, 403b, 457 plan. But everyone should have their own Roth IRA. I like to call it your go home pot, right? A lot of times people leave their job and they take everything on their desk, they take everything on their walls, and they leave their money. I don't understand it, right? We should take everything off our desk, our walls, and our money, put it into your own pot.
Okay, and two people asked, what are the benefits of term insurance?
So the benefits of term insurance, there's so very many. However, I think that the right idea is having a term insurance policy paired with an investment, right? So the number one reason why you should have term insurance is because it's lower cost for greater amounts of insurance, right? And so if you just look in comparison to a whole life policy, right, if you get $50,000 of a whole life policy, you're probably paying $100 or more a month, where the same $50,000 for a term policy is probably $10, $15 a month. Right. And then the other thing is being properly protected. See, term insurance can help properly protect people. What do I mean by that? Well, proper protection, a lot of people hear, life insurance, and immediately they think bury me. And they think, oh, I don't need a big funeral. You can cremate me. Right. And I also say, well, cremations cost money too. Right. But it's not about the smallest part of a life insurance policy is the paying of the final the final resting of that individual, putting them in the ground, having a funeral. The biggest part of a life insurance policy is replacing that individual's income. See, when people die, you're going to mourn two deaths, a financial one and a emotional one. Over time, and belief in God, in my opinion, is going to help heal that emotional value. The financial value, in most people's income, for less than 5%, guys, of your annual income, you can afford your family a proper policy to protect everything you have and more. And then term insurance is something that you're paying for a specific period of time. And that's why a good game plan needs to be set, because when that insurance is up, your wealth should help you carry over from that point on.
So does term insurance have any disadvantages, considering it ends at the end of the term? Suppose you're still alive, then how does that work?
Good question. So does it have a disadvantage? Absolutely. And you just stated it. And that's why I say I believe in myself, is to have it paired with an investment separately, right? I like to say the whole life is like credit cards. They don't work. They were designed for one thing and they do something totally different. And so if you have your insurance paired with an investment specifically, right, the average person, the plan that we put together for someone is around $200 to $250 a month. And so half will go into insurance, half goes into the investment. And at the end of that 30 years on average, that person will have somewhere around $500 to $1.1 million by investing, less than $3 a day. So we're not talking about a lot of money here. To me, there's only one downside with term insurance is when you don't pair with an investment, that could be a downside.
Okay, and then same, it says here, how can we as a community eliminate the fears that a lot of Black people have on making the right investments, fear of being scammed, etc.?
Yes, right. And I meant to mention this when I was going through my talk. I seen a quote the other day by Ciara, but she did not innovate this. Where it said was, people are poor and broke because they think everything's a scam. Right? Specifically our people. When something is new and it's introduced to them, oh, I've never heard of that before, so that must be some sort of scam, or did someone's trying to get something over on you. Well, what about your boss at your job? If you work for someone else, are they not trying to get over on you? Are they not using, right, you to get their plan completed? And so just educating yourself is going to help eliminate those fears, but also fear is good. Right? Fear is good in many ways because it's going to help you moving forward in most cases. So it's understanding that if you have a better understanding, there's less fear, right? So I think that educational factor is huge, and having, whether it's forums like this or, just community get-togethers, and you explain these concepts, it helps eliminate fear.
Can I build on that? And I think that that's a great answer, Michael. It really is about education and understanding how finances work, how the financial system works, how capitalism works. There are also protections that are built into these investments. So, myself working in corporate America for the last 20 years, there are tight controls around the transactions made within these businesses. There's audits that are performed on many of these businesses, certifications that have to be obtained. And, people can go to jail now, whereas, 10, 20 years ago, you typically didn't have such penalties for, fraud and what have you, that typically, scare people away from making investments. I also want to add that there's some historical context here. Our community has been through a lot of disappointment and setback when it comes to financial investments. So there was the Freedman Savings Bank that, went under, where tons of Black people had money in this Freedman Savings Bank that went belly up, and folks lost all of their money. There was the Greenwood massacre where, all of our businesses were destroyed in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There was the underinsurance provision where when Black folks would buy life insurance policies, they were only insured for a third of the value for the same policy that our white counterparts received. There was the labor unions where Blacks weren't allowed to organize. And so all of these things built up a lot of distrust from our community with the financial system. And then, of course, we didn't get a chance to sit down at the table to design what capitalism looks like. And so I think that, if we circle back to education and educating ourselves, taking $25 a month and playing around in a small TD Ameritrade account, or, some type of a small, low risk activity to teach ourselves about investing, those small things will help us become more comfortable with this notion, because there is a lot of money to be made in the marketplace.
All right. And so from our chairman, Sledge, she says, besides buying a home, what are some good investment opportunities that are most impactful, especially in regards to the rule of 72?
That is definitely a great question there, Sledge. And again, mutual funds, right? Having mutual funds set up is a very great investment, because it doesn't require you to start with a ton of money. At least in my company's experience and what we offer, I mean, we're able to help clients with as little as $50 a month, some as little as $25 a month. And so historically over time, those vehicles, in terms of growth mutual funds specifically, have averaged in a 30-year period an average of 12%. In a 10-year period, they've averaged 10%. If you just look over any period of time, whether it's the Great Depression till now, whether it was the single worst stock falling in 1987, still from then until now, you have mutual funds that have seen these kind of hiccups and still return 12% or greater. Again, investing in stock is awesome, but do your research. I always tell people, they ask me questions. We don't really do stock investments, but I always say you need to know what you're putting your money into so you understand the risk that's involved if something were to go wrong. Whereas mutual funds, it's a spread risk. And many times over 150 to 300 different companies whose money is just pooled together with yours. So that shared risk helps alleviate, again, some of the fear that people end up having. And just to kind of piggyback very small of what Mr. Dunn had stated earlier about, us giving Black businesses a chance, right? Sometimes we have to understand these companies are just getting started versus looking at huge companies that have been around for a while. You're comparing apples and oranges. It's not the same, right? If we would have went back in time and seen some of the white counterparts, right, that have these businesses, I'm pretty sure they went through the same trials and tribulations, right? But their perseverance was probably greater. And that's something that we need to learn ourselves, is that success and failure are one. They're not different, right? You have to go through your failures to reach your success. It's that we see the success of people and we judge based on our failures. You can't do that. It doesn't make sense.
Okay, and so we say now, which do you recommend more in terms of investing? Having a certified investment planner or using an app and doing it yourself?
Absolutely. You have to have someone working with you. In fact, anything you're trying to be good at, you need a coach, right? You have to have one. I have yet to see an athlete who's great and the coach is not beside or behind them, right? I've never seen someone build a house without a floor plan. It just doesn't work. And so apps are great. Apps are designed for ease of use. They're not designed for education. It's just the same as, the individual or the parent that thinks that the school is supposed to raise their child. No, the school is there to educate your children. You are supposed to raise them, right? And so these apps are here to help you along the path. You are supposed to do the work, the research to understand, what else can help you get to where you need to get to. And so definitely apps help. But having someone that's working with you directly, who has an interest in you reaching your goals and dreams and level of success that you're looking for, is always going to be your best route.
We started this series with a viewing of a film, the Black Wall Street film. And so what inspired me after watching films like Rosewood, since I wasn't from here, but I've learned a lot just from Black filmmakers, they had a diversified economy in Tulsa and Greenwood, and they were just about totally self-sufficient. White people even came to them to do business, and that's what bred the jealousy to cause them to bomb the city. So it's not impossible if we look around and see just even the yellow pages that we used to have when we had desk phones, right? And find the different businesses that meet your needs. It's good to invest in transportation. It's good to invest in food. It's good to invest in communication. But it may not be that it might be Comcast, but we have people at Comcast. We have executive people there. We can support a business that supports us in ways other than having a token up front. Right? And so, people are criticizing Papa John's, for example. But Papa John's, a lot of the franchise owners are Black people. So go to that one, as opposed to saying, I'm going to boycott Papa John's. And as a matter of fact, the Caribbean community has been caught up in this Goya thing where, we're going to boycott Goya because he likes Trump. Well, you're not going to eat a whole lot of good seasonings and all that if you boycott Goya. So, and he's an immigrant. So at what point do we not go emotional, right? Or operate under very limited information and research for ourselves, right? There are things you can get from everybody. I say buy Black and sell to everyone. I learned that from Philip, right? From Mr. Dunn. So, there's some food for thought on how this Black economics works, group economics, right? Mr. Sledge, unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Marilyn. I'm glad you brought up the concept of when we're spending our Black dollars to spend it in a way that is more beneficial to us, even though there's not that many products out there that we directly produce, but digging a little deeper, like you say, you drive a Ford because a Black person produced it. My question is this: in regards to right now, we're in a political climate. In regards to, I was watching something on IG from Ice Cube, and he says that after watching the Democratic convention, he didn't see anything that spoke to the Black community and as far as how we're to build. Right. And I don't know what the Republicans will have in place at their convention. But of course, we see with the current administration there now, certain policies how they are operating or running the country. In regards to our people and how we look at policies and politics and stuff like that, what is the best advice that can be given from a structural level, at large, and how should we be viewing that? Because I feel like these policies definitely influence the ability to build wealth at the same rate that the whites and the other, people or ethnicities, ethnic groups can, grow.
Yeah, and that's a good question. Politics is always a really, sticky conversation. But we know from our history that a lot of the executive actions, legislation were designed to impede the growth of wealth in the Black community. And if they can do it in that instance, then we also know that the reverse can be the same. So they can design legislation and executive action that can benefit us as well. The challenge that we have is finding the right candidates that will do so. One of the things, obviously Donald Trump does not appear on his face to be supportive of the Black community. I don't feel it personally. And then when you take a look at Joe Biden, a lot of the rhetoric that comes from his campaign, it doesn't appear to go far enough to say that, hey, we're going to do something significant for the Black community. So I think that our approach should be to start at the local levels and finding those candidates that are going to go in and take specific action for Black community. They can do this. This really, is nothing new. They've been doing it since 1776. So we have to start at the local level, putting pressure on our local politicians to make changes that are going to benefit us. There are opportunities at the city council level where they can design grants, loan programs, projects that can be targeted specifically for Black-owned business. We just have to put the pressure on the right people, whether it's our city council persons, our mayors, our county elected officials, and at the state level. And then once we get enough activity going at those levels, we can start to make headway at the federal, at the national level. But we got to start within our general locations first, voting those folks in that are going to make some significant changes. And it's not just the fiscal financial pieces. It's taking a look at the folks that are in charge of the legal processes. If you have a district attorney that, locks up Black people like they do in Louisiana for stealing hedge clippers for life, then obviously that district attorney needs to go. And we have to put pressure on a lot of the constituencies that help to get those folks elected. So if you have someone like Bluebell, which is located up in Brenham, if they are supporting a candidate in my county that just so happens to lock up Black people at a 60, 75% rate, then maybe we don't need to buy Bluebell for a while. And then Bluebell can help to lean on some of those politicians as well. So we've got to take an approach that starts locally and then also leverage our financial buying power to, get the attention of a lot of these companies that donate to these candidates as well.
funny that you should mention Bluebell. I haven't eaten Bluebell since they moved some of their operations to Arkansas. Then it got contaminated because I know people from Brenham who lost their job as a result. So, yeah, we have to either look at our personal relationships with businesses already or family members, or look at the track record, of how they handle us.
Yeah,
And vote and shop accordingly.
Especially taking a look at that track record. And I think that, there's this old saying, when someone shows who they are, please believe them. So the first time we see, let's just say Joe Biden gets, inaugurated January 20th. First time we see Joe Biden do something that is counter to our community, we need to start looking for that next candidate. And we shouldn't be made to feel ashamed of, like what Ice Cube said, really evaluating now. Because I think that in this day and age, we're a little bit more knowledgeable about where we should be as a community and what actions they can do. They came up with trillions of dollars during COVID to provide relief. So we know that the money is there. We know that the means are there. We're smart enough now. We got to start holding people accountable.
Exactly.
And those trillions of dollars disproportionately did not reach us at all. So yeah, it's interesting.
I think it still boils down to our own literacy in terms of who in our community already does what. Because the minute they said they were going to build a wall, they're going to get support from Congress to build a wall. And so who were our construction companies where we could test them to see if they would actually hire them as part of that? And if they didn't, then we know that we're not going to support that anymore. Right? So look at our subcontractors and where they can fit. And that's how you chip away at the system, right? You don't just try to eat the elephant one bite. You have to do one bite at a time. And so you have to be strategic about these things, right?
Yes, you mentioned the emotional aspect of it. Black people, we largely respond out of emotion. So every time, some unarmed person gets shot from our community, we'll boycott and we'll take our dollars out of banks and put them into other banks. But then as soon as we encounter, some negativity or something we don't like, we revert back to our old behavior. It's kind of like what Michael was saying, if you see your investment take a dive, you get afraid and you sell. Well, that emotion, that fear or that emotion, it doesn't last too long. And so we need to work through the emotion and really focus on the principle investing, making principal purchases from our businesses, and treating each other in a way that's going to really repair and build our community. So it's a whole lot of things we got to work on. But I certainly don't want to suggest that we try to do them all at once. But if we focus in on buying black, I think that's going to help our community tremendously.
Unmute, Rock. Unmute.
I did. Thank you. Just took a while to get to the unmute button. I apologize for that. What I did want to say was that I appreciate, and I'm actually, for lack of a better term, I'm kind of loading up on the information that you guys are giving me, because one of the things that I've thought about in the last couple of months was this, that when we look at the impact that the Black Wall Street had back in the time when it was implemented, what they did was they took the rhetoric of the United States at that time and they used it as a catalyst to promote self-awareness and self-sufficiency in the Black community. I do think that what we need to do is not only idolize that same philosophy, but put it into practice. Because if the current administration has been telling us, look, yeah, you're here, but we don't really want you here, but we still have the financial backing. We have enough financial backing where we can say, okay, we can take not only from what we've been given, but we can take that and invest in our own communities. I think that we need to use that as a catalyst, as opposed to being offended by the rhetoric. We need to be motivated by the rhetoric. Okay, y'all don't want us here? Okay, we can separate ourselves and create for our own, And at this point, we have been equipped enough to say, well, they're not going to come in and burn down our communities. They're not going to come in and burn down our banks. They're not going to come in and burn down our businesses, because we're strong enough and we have enough numbers to say, all right, well, we can still sustain by ourselves. When we realize that Caribbean blacks and American blacks are the same people, when we realize that Hispanics and us are the same people, we came on the same boats. It's just that we had different parts of Europe that came and invaded us and created this stigma that we're different people. We're all the same. And understand, when we extract that dollar from them and put it back into us and use the rhetoric that we've been hearing for the last 3 years to catalyze and to spark a fire in us, I think that we can successfully make this thing happen, and I still think it's a shame that, in 2020, that we have a lot of Black Americans that think that because Kamala Harris has a Jamaican father that she's not Black. She is. Because guess what? If she wasn't Kamala Harris and didn't have that status, if she got pulled over by a cop, she's still a Black woman. Me as a Bajan American, if I get pulled over, they don't know if I'm of Bajan descent or of American descent. They don't care. They just see a Black man with a beard and locks, and I'm a threat. So I think that we should use that same rhetoric, use it as a catalyst. Stop being insulted by what America tells us. America tells us that we're still 3/5 of a human being. Okay, that's fine. But I can write my own rules now, because I have Black business owners like the Puffies and the Jay-Z's and the Sledge Leonidas, believe it or not. We have these people that are in place that we can now do for ourselves and not have to eat off the crumbs that America just shoves to us. We can do for ourselves, and that's just my personal opinion. I'm sorry to get on my soapbox.
No, and you have great financial advisors like Michael Beeman and Marilyn Douglas Jones, right? And a coach and a mentor like Philip Dunn. So that's what networking is all about too, right? Yeah. And so this is a perfect way to sort of kick off our series again in the month of Marcus Garvey and National Black Business Month, right? Think about those things and learn about a new business every day, and how we can fit it in to our portfolio.
And can I add one more thing? I do see one of the questions here at the bottom about, what was the catalyst that helped me spark it in myself, achieving financial freedom versus status quo. And again, it's just desire, right? Wanting, I remember as a kid, my dad telling me no often, right? I would ask for certain things and I was like, no. And then again, and no. And so I could not wait to get to a point where I could actually make income and get these things that I desired. And I realized very quickly, being that I started working at the age of 15, I kind of, I forged my working papers, so to say, so I could work, because I got tired of just waiting or sitting on the sidelines. I never played a football game where sitting on the sidelines was cool, right? I need to be in the game. And so that desire sparked a fire in me to go and get it myself, right? But then it was sparked even further as, going through society and having braids in my hair and coming to an interview perfectly dressed and, having the proper resume, and nothing else spoke to the fact that there's no reason why I should not deserve this job other than my appearance. Right. And then so you kind of think back like, man, what do I got to do? Right. And so I want to tell a very small story. Right. And this goes to my wife and our kids. We're sitting and, she's doing our girls' hair. We have 2 girls, 10 and 6. And she's doing this 6-year-old's hair. Right. And she hates getting her hair done. Like, she loves the look, but she hates getting it done. Right. And so the whole time she needs her to put her head down, and as she's doing the hair, she keeps pulling her head up. She keeps pulling her head up. And, it's so funny, she's like, hey, listen, Sky, you got to keep your head down. Mommy's almost finished. Just keep your head down. And my 10-year-old is waiting on the sidelines to get her hair done, right? She's next up. And so finally, after several backs and forths, she's like, listen, okay, I'm done, because you won't keep your head down for me to finish your head. I have other people waiting to get in the chair to get finished, right? And then so it's fine, like, okay, you go ahead and do what you're going to do, and I'm going to do the 10-year-old's hair because she's ready to go and keep her head down. And so what does that have to do with us, right? Well, as Black people, we love the look and feel of what success looks like. We love what you can buy with success. We love that feeling of, you can have ownership. You can walk around and be yourself and be who you are, but we're not in many cases ready to put our head down and stay focused for a period of time, so that way you can reap the rewards of the fruits of your labor, right? And so I love also saying that, talent is awesome. LeBron James, awesome, right? However, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work. And so if you keep your head down and you keep focused, there's nothing that you can't do. And we tell our girls this all the time. They say, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I say, great. Make sure you do your research and see if it's something you really want to do, and then go after it, right? It doesn't matter what it is. If you're going to do something, make sure you give it your all. Because at the end of the day, if you give it everything you got, you don't have anything else left to give.
See, I love that, Michael, because it ties into for our community as well, where, we really have to have a strong sense of self. I think that if we had a stronger sense of our history and our culture and where we come from and what we've been through, nothing is impossible for us. We are some of the most competitive, most highly performing. We go into corporate America and we work twice as hard to get half the reward. And we do that, we give 150%. And, what if we gave that same 150% to our community? What if we gave that same 150% to our businesses? And, we have to start thinking about it in terms of what's in it for me. What's in it for us when we buy Black or when we invest is not just for us, but it's for our children, it's for our grandchildren, it's for that lineage. And I think that once we make that stronger connection to the what's in it for us, once we have a stronger connection to a sense of self, our community can really transform itself from within. And we don't need to, go out to other communities to build our community. I agree with what Noel said. Let's take that, build yourself up by your bootstraps mentality now that we have bootstraps. Before we didn't, but let's take that now and let's really transform our community.
Awesome. Miss Fabiola?
I think that was phenomenal. Thank you both for sharing some great nuggets. I definitely feel inspired. HCPA, our mission is to do exactly that. We've had great leaders. We have a great chairman. We have a great team. And it's just about the commitment of building together and learning together and sharing together in order to help advance our communities on the island and here as diasporic in the United States. So with that, I would invite both of you to stay active with us. We do have a business directory that we're working on. We're going to be launching, and we would love to have both of you listed. Part of our membership and our membership token is to do that, right? Is to start working internally in order to help us progress outward and to make sure that, we're practicing, we're modeling what we're saying from the smallest levels to the highest levels. So please keep a lookout for some of the other events that we have going on with our Generational Wealth series. Please stay engaged with us through social media. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, HCPA, Houston Caribbean Professionals. And again, thank you, and we look forward to connecting.